You stand at the edge of a frozen wasteland, the wind howling like the cries of ancient spirits, whipping snow into your face as if the Ice Age itself is trying to bury you alive. It's 12,000 years ago, at the tail end of the Pleistocene, and the world you know is locked in ice, a brutal realm where survival hangs by a thread. Imagine the crunch of snow under your feet, the biting cold seeping through your furs, and in the distance the flickering light of a fire drawing you toward a cave mouth that gapes like a wound in the earth. You approach cautiously, your breath fogging the air, heart pounding with a mix of fear and curiosity. What horrors lie within? What rituals did our ancestors perform in these shadow depths to appease the gods of ice and storm? Before we plunge into these chilling tales of sacrifice and survival, if you're fascinated by the dark underbelly of human history, hit that like button and subscribe for more journeys into the forgotten past. And drop a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from. It's mind-blowing how we're connected across millennia, you and I, unravelling these ancient mysteries from our modern worlds. You step inside the cave, the air thick with the scent of smoke and damp stone, and your eyes adjust to the dim glow of tallow lamps fashioned from animal fat. Shadows dance on the walls, painted with ochre handprints and crude figures of beasts, mammoths, saber-toothed cats, and humans locked in eternal hunts. But this isn't just a shelter. It's a sanctuary of dread, where your clan gathers not for warmth alone, but for rites that demand blood. You feel the weight of generations pressing down, the echoes of drums made from stretched hides pounding in rhythm with your pulse. These are the horrific rituals that ended Ice Age lives, practices born from desperation in a world where the ice never fully retreated, and famine stalked every shadow. Archaeologists have unearthed evidence of these ceremonies, from infant burial sites in Alaska to cannibalistic remains in European caves, revealing a tapestry of terror that challenges everything you thought you knew about our prehistoric kin. Picture yourself as one of them, a hunter-gatherer, your body scarred from battles with megafauna, your family huddled around you. The last Ice Age is waning, but the climate is unforgiving, with sudden freezes that kill crops and drive herds away. You believe the gods control the weather, the animals, the very spark of life. To survive, you must offer something precious, something that proves your devotion. Whispers among the elders speak of the ultimate sacrifice, the lives of the innocent, the young, to bring rain or ensure a bountiful hunt. You shudder as you recall the stories passed down, children led to altars, their cries silenced in the name of the clan's endurance. Recent discoveries like those reported in scientific journals confirm these tales aren't mere myths. In a site near what we now call Upward Sun River in Alaska, archaeologists found the remains of 2 infants buried beneath the cremated body of a toddler, dating back 11,500 years. You imagine the scene, a small community, faces etched with grief and resolve, performing a death ritual to honour their lost young, perhaps to appease spirits angered by the harsh world. You kneel by the fire pit in the cave, feeling the heat lick your skin, and listen as the shaman begins the chant. His voice is gravelly, invoking the ancestors who survived the great ice sheets that once covered half the continent. But survival came at a cost. You learn of rituals where the living consumed the dead, not out of starvation alone, but as a sacred act to absorb their strength, to bind the community in blood. A study from just last year, published in a heritage journal, details evidence from Clogs Cave in Australia, where ancient sticks coated in fat and blood suggest ceremonies from the end of the Ice Age, around 12,000 years ago. These weren't random acts, they were structured rites, passed down through 100 generations, as one researcher noted in a viral thread online. You feel a chill unrelated to the cold. Could your own ancestors have partaken in such horrors? The patterns emerge. In times of drought or failed hunts, clans turn to the unthinkable, sacrificing the vulnerable to curry favour with unseen forces. As you delve deeper into the cave, the walls close in, and you spot the altar, a flat stone stained dark with what could only be blood. Here, the ritual's intensified. You envision a young girl, much like the one in those ancient tales, her small frame trembling as she's prepared for the offering. The elders paint her skin with red ochre, symbolising the life force she's about to give. Drums beat faster, building tension, and the clan gathers, their eyes wide with a mix of awe and terror. This isn't fiction, it's drawn from real finds, like the ritual cannibalism uncovered in Gough's Cave in England, where human bones from 14 to 700 years ago show cut marks and engraving, suggesting not just consumption but ceremonial defleshing. You wonder, was it to honour the dead or to harness their power against the encroaching ice? The horror lies in the details, the careful scraping of flesh, the cracking of bones for marrow, all part of a rite that ensured the group's survival while ending individual lives in agony. You pause, your hand touching the cold stone, and reflect on why these rituals persisted. In a world where megafauna roamed and humans were few, every death mattered, yet some were orchestrated for the greater good. Online discussions buzz with theories. Perhaps these acts were tied to shamanic visions, where the sacrifice became intermediaries to the sub-spirit world. You recall accounts from ethnographic studies of similar practices in later cultures, like Inca child sacrifices during droughts, where tears were believed to summon rain. The Ice Age versions were no less gruesome. Infants buried alive or cremated in pits, their tiny skeletons telling tales of deliberate endings. A Fox News report from years back highlighted such a sight, where the positioning of bodies suggested careful ritual, not random burial. You feel the weight of it. These weren't monsters, but people like you, driven by fear and faith in a frozen apocalypse. Deeper still, you encounter carvings that depict the rites in stark detail. Figures holding knives, others bound and kneeling. The air grows heavier, laced with the imagined scent of burning herbs used to purify the space. You learn that these rituals often peaked during climatic shifts, as the Ice Age ebbed, bringing uncertainty. Herds migrated unpredictably, and starvation loomed. To combat this, clans performed blood rites, sometimes involving the entire community. Evidence from Somerset, England, shows human skulls turned into cups, used perhaps in feasts that blended the sacred and the savage. You imagine sipping from such a vessel, the ritual binding you to the dead, their essence flowing into you. It's horrific, yet in the context of survival, it makes a twisted sense, ending one life to preserve many. As the fire dies down, you sit among the shadows, piecing together the patterns. These rituals weren't isolated. They spanned continents, from Eurasian steppes to North American plains. A recent archaeological blog post described Ice Age cannibalism as potentially ritualistic, with bones marked in ways that suggest symbolic meaning beyond mere sustenance. You ponder the psychology. In the face of extinction-level threats, humans turned inward, sacrificing their own to control the uncontrollable. The irony stings. These acts, meant to ensure life, ended so many prematurely, yet they may have helped small bands endure, their descendants eventually thawing into the modern world. You rise, the cave's chill clinging to you, and step back into the blizzard outside. But the story doesn't end here. The true horrors deepen, as we explore specific cases that archaeologists have only recently uncovered. The rituals grew more elaborate, more desperate as the Ice Age clung on. The snow swirls around you like vengeful ghosts as you trudge away from the cave, but the pull of those ancient horrors draws you toward another site, hidden beneath the frozen tundra. You imagine trekking across what is now Siberia, where the permafrost preserves secrets that time forgot. Here, in the fading grip of the Ice Age, clans faced winters that lasted years, forcing them into rituals that blurred the line between salvation and savagery. You feel the ground shift underfoot, as if the earth itself remembers the blood spilled upon it. Let's journey to one of the most chilling discoveries, the child sacrifices of the Yamnaya people, precursors to many Eurasian cultures, whose rites involved offerings to storm gods during the climatic upheavals around 5,000 years ago. But wait, we're going further back, to the true Ice Age heart, where evidence from 20,000 years ago paints a picture of deliberate endings. You arrive at a windswept plain, the horizon blurred by ice fog, and descend into a pit where archaeologists unearth the remains of what they call the Sungir burials in Russia. Dating back 34,000 years, this site reveals young lives cut short in elaborate ceremonies. You kneel beside the grave, your fingers brushing the imagined bones of two children, aged about 10 and 12, buried head-to-head in shallow pits. Their skeletons are adorned with thousands of ivory beads, fox teeth pendants, and spears straightened for the afterlife, signs of a ritual that demanded immense effort. But why? You ponder as you examine the evidence. These weren't natural deaths. Forensic analysis shows no signs of violence on the bones, yet the positioning suggests they were sacrificed, perhaps poisoned or strangled, to accompany an adult male in death. The horror sinks in. These children, full of life and potential, were chosen to serve in the spirit world, their youthful energy offered to ensure the clan's prosperity amid retreating glaciers. As you stand there, the wind carries echoes of their final moments. Picture the scene. The clan gathers under a pale sun, the shaman chanting incantations while the children are dressed in finery, their small hands clutching talismans. The air fills with the scent of burning resin, masking the fear. These rituals, as detailed in a 22 study from Nature Journal, weren't random. They followed patterns seen across Ice Age Europe, where high-status burials often included human offerings. You feel a pang of empathy. The parents torn between love and duty, watching as their offspring are led to the pit. The beads, painstakingly carved from mammoth tusk, represent weeks of labour, underscoring the rite's importance. In a world where megafauna hunts could fail and avalanches bury entire groups, such sacrifices were seen as necessary bargains with the divine. You move on, the cold numbing your limbs, toward another haunting locale. The Dolní Věstonice site in the Czech Republic, from 29,000 years ago. Here you uncover a triple burial that defies comprehension. A woman and two men, their bodies intertwined in death, with evidence of ritual killing. Archaeologists found red ochre scattered over them, a pigment used in ceremonies to symbolize blood and rebirth. You imagine the rite, the woman, perhaps a seer or outcast, bound and placed between the men, all three dispatched with blows or suffocation. The horror amplifies when you learn one man's hand was positioned over the woman's groin, a pose suggesting a fertility ritual gone dark meant to appease gods during a time of population decline. A BBC documentary highlighted this find, noting the deliberate nature. No battle wounds, just ceremonial arrangement. You shudder, realizing these acts ended lives to invoke new ones, a twisted cycle in the face of Ice Age sterility. Deeper into the narrative, you trek to the American continent, crossing a land bridge long since submerged. In what is now Montana, the Anzac site reveals a 1,200-600-year-old burial of a toddler, covered in red ochre and accompanied by Clovis points, tools from a culture that thrived at the Ice Age's end. But this child wasn't alone in death. Isotopic analysis suggests the ochre came from distant sources, indicating a pilgrimage for the rite. You envision the parents, grief-stricken yet resolute, burying their son with artifacts worth a fortune in effort, perhaps sacrificing him to ensure safe passage for migrating herds. The ritual's horror lies in its premeditation. The child, only 18 months old, likely killed mercifully but deliberately, his tiny body a conduit to the spirits controlling the thawing world. As you press forward, the landscape shifts to forested hills, reminiscent of ancient France, where the Lascaux caves hide more than art. Nearby sites show evidence of child immolation, with burned bones from 15,000 years ago suggesting fire rituals. You stand before a reconstructed pyre, flames crackling in your mind's eye, as young ones are consigned to the blaze, their ashes scattered to summon rain or fertility. A study in Antiquity Journal describes similar practices, where fire purified the sacrifice, transforming agony into divine favour. The patterns connect. Across continents, Ice Age peoples used fire, ochre and burial to end lives, believing it balanced the scales against environmental chaos. You pause by a frozen river, reflecting on the escalation. These weren't isolated incidents. Climate data shows that as the Ice Age waned, rituals intensified, with more evidence of violence in burials. In Portugal's Lagar Velho site, a 24,000-year-old child burial mixes Neanderthal and modern human traits, buried with pierced shells and red deer antlers, perhaps a hybrid sacrificed to bridge worlds. The rite's details chill you. The body positioned fetal as if returning to the earth womb, ended prematurely to heal rifts in the clan. Further along, you encounter tales from the Arctic, where Inuit oral histories echo Ice Age practices. Elders speak of Angakuk shamans who demanded sacrifices during famines, mirroring finds like the Alaskan infants. You feel the isolation, the vast white expanse where one wrong winter meant extinction. These rituals, horrific as they are, forge social bonds, ensuring group survival at individual cost. As twilight falls, you spot distant lights, another gathering site. The horrors evolve, turning from child offerings to something even darker. The consumption of kin in sacred feasts. The Ice Age's desperation bred cannibals not of necessity but of ceremony. You draw closer to those flickering lights on the horizon, the crunch of ice under your boots echoing the gnawing hunger that plagued these ancient peoples. The Ice Age's desperation bred cannibals not of necessity but of ceremony. Turning kin into sustenance for both body and soul, you enter a dimly lit encampment, the air thick with the metallic tang of blood and the acrid smoke of ritual fires. Shadows play across faces gaunt from starvation, eyes hollow, yet fervent with belief. Here, in the waning Pleistocene, around 15,000 years ago, clans didn't just eat the dead to survive, they devoured them in structured rites, absorbing their essence to ward off the encroaching Thor's uncertainties. You feel a primal revulsion mixed with morbid fascination, as if peering into the darkest mirror of humanity. You approach the central fire, where the remnants of a feast lie scattered, bones cracked open, marrow extracted with deliberate care. This isn't the frantic scavenging of the starving, it's a sacrament. Take Gough's Cave in England's Cheddar Gorge, a site from 14 to 700 years ago that archaeologists excavated with growing horror. You imagine yourself there, descending into the damp cavern, your torch illuminating human skulls meticulously engraved with patterns, turned into drinking cups. The bones bear cut marks from stone tools, not random hacks, but precise incisions that suggest defleshing as part of a ceremony. A 2015 study in the Journal of Archaeological Science revealed that these weren't battle victims. The marks match those on animal bones processed for food, implying the dead were treated as sacred prey. You picture the rite, a fallen warrior's body laid out, the shaman invoking spirits while the clan carefully strips flesh, consumes it raw or roasted, believing it transfers strength and wisdom to the living. The fire's warmth does little to chase the chill from your bones as you witness the details unfold. Teeth marks on femurs, deliberate fractures to access brain matter, each act laden with meaning. In this ritual, ending a life wasn't enough. The body became a vessel for communion. You hear the chants rising, rhythmic and haunting, as participants pass around the skull cups, sipping a brew mixed with the deceased's blood. The horror intensifies when you learn these practices spanned groups. Similar evidence appears in Belgium's Trou de la Nolette, where Ice Age bones show gnawing and engraving from 40,000 years ago. Were these Neanderthals or early modern humans? The lines blur, but the pattern holds. Cannibalism as a bridge to the afterlife, a way to honour and harness the dead amid glacial retreats that disrupted hunting grounds. You step back, your stomach churning, and follow a trail of discarded tools to another site, this time in the open air of what is now Germany. The Herxheim pit, though slightly post-Ice Age at 7,000 years ago, echoes earliest traditions with mass cannibalistic rites that may have roots in the Pleistocene's end. You stand at the edge of a vast enclosure where over 500 individuals were dismembered, their bones boiled and scraped. Archaeologists found skulls calottes, tops removed like lids, suggesting brains were extracted for ceremonial eating. You envision the scale. Entire villages gathered, selecting victims from rivals or kin, their bodies processed in a frenzy of drums and incantations. A report in Antiquity Journal posits this as a response to climatic stress, much like Ice Age famines, where consuming the enemy absorbed their power, ending feuds through horrific unity. As night deepens, you trek northward, the aurora borealis dancing overhead like spectral witnesses. In the frozen reaches of Siberia's Denisova cave, evidence from 50,000 years ago hints at hybrid rituals where Denisovans and Neanderthals intermingled, their remains showing signs of consumption. You crouch by a hearth, examining finger bones with cut marks, imagining a rite where mixed blood individuals were sacrificed and eaten to merge lineages, ensuring survival in a world of competing hominids. The DNA evidence, published in Science in 2018, confirms interbreeding, but the cannibalism adds a layer of terror. Did they eat their own hybrids to appease ancestral spirits? You feel the isolation, the desperate logic. In an era when ice locked away resources, every calorie counted, but so did every soul. You pause by a frozen stream, dipping your hand into the icy water, reflecting on the patterns that link these sites. Cannibalism wasn't mere survival, it was symbolic, often targeting the skull and long bones, seats of intellect and strength. In Croatia's Krapina site, 130,000-year-old Neanderthal bones bear similar marks, suggesting rituals that predated the last Ice Age peak. You wonder about the participants' minds. Did guilt haunt them, or did faith justify the acts? Ethnographic parallels from later tribes, like the Four People of Papua New Guinea, show how such rites spread diseases like Kuru. But in the Ice Age, the immediate threat was extinction, not long-term consequences. Further into the night, you reach a coastal bluff overlooking a stormy sea, reminiscent of ancient Alaska. Here, the Dorset culture's predecessors left traces of maritime rituals around 4,000 years ago. But Ice Age echoes persist in oral lore of eating the drowned to reclaim their spirits from the deep. You imagine a boat ritual, a fisherman lost to waves, his body recovered, portions consumed in a feast to prevent his ghost from cursing the hunt. Archaeological finds of modified bones support this, blending cannibalism with shamanic voyages. As dawn breaks, painting the sky in bloody hues, you spot a massive bone pile, a midden of ritual refuse. The horrors compound. These acts often involve torture before consumption, prolonging agony to heighten spiritual power. In France's Fontbréguat cave, 6,000-year-old remains show pre-mortem cuts, linking to Ice Age patterns where pain was part of the offering. You feel the weight of accumulated dread, each site building on the last, revealing humanity's capacity for darkness in a pursuit of light. Yet, as the sun rises, you sense a shift. The Ice Age's end brought not just warmer climes, but evolving rites. The sacrifices grew communal, involving entire groups in mass events that shocked even hardened archaeologists. Yet as the sun rises, you sense a shift. The Ice Age's end brought not just warmer climes, but evolving rites. The sacrifices grew communal, involving entire groups in mass events that shocked even hardened archaeologists. You find yourself amid a vast gathering place, the ground trampled by countless feet, the air buzzing with anticipatory dread. No longer isolated offerings in hidden caves, these rituals engulfed whole communities, turning personal horrors into spectacles of collective desperation. Around 10,000 years ago, as glaciers receded and seas rose, flooding ancestral lands, clans banded together in ceremonies that demanded multiple lives, believing mass bloodletting could stem the chaos of a changing world. You stand at the center of such a sight, feeling the pulse of the crowd, their chants rising like a storm. You turn your gaze to Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey, a monumental complex from 11,600 years ago, predating agriculture and cities. This isn't just architecture, it's a theatre of ritual. You wander among the T-shaped pillars, carved with animals and abstract symbols, imagining thousands converging here at the Ice Age's twilight. Recent excavations suggest human sacrifices underpinned its construction. Skulls with cut marks found in pits, and modified into masks for dances that reenacted killings. You picture the scene, pilgrims from distant lands driven by prophecies of flooding, selecting victims from their ranks. The chosen are bound to pillars, their throats slit as blood pools in carved channels, offerings to gods of stone and skue. A 2017 study in Science Advances links these rites to climatic stress, where mass events forge social bonds through shared terror, ending dozens of lives to inaugurate a new era. The sun climbs higher, casting long shadows over the stones, and you feel the weight of participation. These weren't passive observers. Everyone played a role, some as executioners, others as witnesses, all complicit in the horror. You envision the build-up, days of fasting, hallucinogenic brews from local plants inducing visions, then the crescendo of drums and screams. Victims, often captives or volunteers, were paraded, their bodies painted with symbols of renewal. The killings were methodical, decapitation for some, live burial for others, ensuring the rite's power permeated the group. Patterns emerged from similar sites. In Jericho, early post-Ice Age skulls plastered with clay suggest ancestral cults where heads were removed in communal ceremonies, preserving the dead's presence while ending lives to honour them. You move southward, the landscape warming as you approach the Natufian sites in the Levant from 12,500 years ago. Here, semi-sedentary hunter-gatherers built the first villages, but at a cost. You stand in a circular structure, a precursor to temples, where mass graves reveal dozens interred together, some with bound limbs indicating sacrifice. Archaeologists uncovered evidence of feasting alongside the burials, animal bones mixed with human, suggesting cannibalistic elements in group rites. You imagine the horror. an entire lineage selected during a famine, marched to the pit, dispatched with stone axes amid wails and incantations. A report in PLOS One details the isotopic signatures, showing these people came from afar, perhaps drawn for a grand ritual to appease gods angered by the drying climate. The communal aspect amplifies the dread, families watching kin die, then partaking in a feast that bound survivors in guilt and unity. As midday heat builds, you trek to the American Southwest, where Clovis culture sites from 13,000 years ago hint at large-scale hunts turning ritualistic. You arrive at a kill site not of mammoths, but potentially of humans. Scattered bones with unusual fractures suggest gatherings where outcasts were hunted like game, their deaths celebrated in dances around bonfires. Oral traditions from later Pueblo peoples echo this, describing witch hunts rooted in Ice Age scarcity, where groups purged the cursed through communal stoning or burning. You feel the frenzy, the crowd encircling the victims, stones flying, blood soaking the earth, as shamans declare the rite complete, ensuring bountiful seasons. You pause in the shade of a rock overhang, contemplating the escalation. These mass rituals often coincided with solstices or eclipses, timed to cosmic events that heightened fear. In Scandinavia's Mesolithic sites, around 8,000 years ago but influenced by Ice Age traditions, bog bodies show groups drowned or strangled in watery pits, preserved by peat. You envision a lakeside ceremony, dozens led into the mire, weighted with stones, their struggles watched by hundreds as offerings to water spirits for melting ice's floods. The bog bodies exhibit in museums worldwide displays the evidence, ropes around necks, last meals of ritual grains, pointing to communal decisions, not individual murders. Further afield, you reach the shores of ancient Lake Mungo in Australia, where 40,000-year-old remains include cremated bodies with signs of group rites. You stand by the dry lake bed, wind whispering through dunes, imagining a funeral pyre for multiple individuals, their ashes mixed and scattered in a ceremony that ended lives prematurely to guide souls. Recent DNA studies link these to continuous occupation, suggesting rituals evolved from Ice Age survival strategies where mass cremations purified communities during disease outbreaks. As evening approaches, you climb a hill overlooking a valley, spotting the outlines of a massive earthwork, a ceremonial mound from the end of the Ice Age in North America. Sites like Poverty Point, from 3,700 years ago but with deeper roots, feature rings where thousands gathered. Evidence of human bone artifacts implies sacrifices integrated into building projects, lives ended to sanctify the land. You hear the echoes of chants, the thud of bodies into foundation pits, communal horror forging identity. The stars emerge and you realize these rites bridged the Ice Age to the Holocene, their legacy lingering in myths. But the final horrors await, the most extreme rituals where entire communities self-destructed in apocalyptic fervor, believing the end of ice heralded the world's rebirth through ultimate sacrifice. The stars emerge, and you realize these rites bridged the Ice Age to the Holocene, their legacy lingering in myths. But the final horrors await, the most extreme rituals where entire communities self-destructed in apocalyptic fervor, believing the end of ice heralded the world's rebirth through ultimate sacrifice. You descend into a valley shrouded in mist, the ground uneven with ancient mounds that whisper of mass extinction events, orchestrated not by nature but by human hands. Around 9,000 years ago, as the last ice sheets melted and coastlines vanished underwater, some groups saw these changes as omens of Armageddon, responding with rituals that consumed everyone involved. You feel the collective madness building, a frenzy where survival meant embracing oblivion. You arrive at a reconstructed site inspired by findings in the submerged lands off Doggerland, the lost continent between Britain and Europe, flooded as the Ice Age ended. Here, underwater archaeology has revealed stone circles and bone scatters suggesting cataclysmic gatherings. You imagine standing on what was once dry land, now a sinking plain, as thousands converge for a final rite. Prophets, driven by visions from starvation-induced trances, declare the rising seas a divine flood, demanding total sacrifice to appease it. The horror unfolds. Families link arms, marching into the waves, weighted with stones, drowning en masse, while shamans beat drums from the shore. Evidence from similar Mesolithic sites, like those in the North Sea, shows clustered remains with no signs of struggle, implying voluntary or coerced group suicides. A 2020 study in Quaternary Science Reviews links these to rapid sea level rise, where communities, seeing their world vanish, chose ritual end over slow erosion. The mist thickens and you wade through shallow waters, feeling the pull of currents that claimed so many. These weren't small-scale offerings, they were communal apocalypses, entire villages extinguishing themselves in fire or flood. You picture the scene, elders distributing poisonous brews made from hemlock and mushrooms, the group drinking in unison, bodies collapsing in a circle as hallucinations blend with death throes. Artifacts from flooded sites, including carved stones depicting swirling waters and human figures merging with sea beasts, suggest these rites aimed to rebirth the world through collective demise. The pattern terrifies. Similar events echoed in latest cultures, like the Maya bloodletting ceremonies, but here at the Ice Age's close they were raw, unrefined, driven by pure existential dread. You press on, the water lapping at your knees, toward a promontory where flames once roared. In what is now the Black Sea region, the sudden inundation around 700 years ago, possibly the biblical flood's inspiration, sparked mass rituals. You stand amid imagined pyres, where communities set ablaze their settlements, immolating themselves inside. Charred bones from underwater digs show huddled groups, adults shielding children, all perishing together. Dao. Archaeologists theorize these were renewal fires, ending the old world to birth the new, with survivors, if any, carrying tales of divine wrath. You hear the screams in your mind, the crackle of timber as faith overrides instinct, turning a changing climate into a call for annihilation. As the mist clears, you climb to higher ground overlooking the flooded valley and reflect on sites like Çatalhöyük in Turkey from 9,000 years ago, where plastered skulls and wall paintings depict group dismemberments. You envision a festival turning fatal, dancers in animal masks, escalating to real killings, bodies quartered and distributed among the living in a final feast. The horror peaks in the realization these acts weren't failure, thus woes, but successes in their eyes, purging weakness to strengthen descendants. Patterns connect globally. In South America's Monteverde, 14 to 500-year-old settlements show abrupt abandonments with ritual burnings, perhaps self-inflicted ends during climatic shifts. You sit on a rocky outcrop, the sun setting in a blaze of red, pondering the psychology. These apocalyptic rites often involved hallucinogens, blurring reality, convincing participants that death was transcendence. In Siberia's melting permafrost, recent thaws reveal mummified groups from 10,000 years ago, positioned in embraces, with toxic residues suggesting mass poisoning. You imagine the last moments, songs of farewell, visions of paradise beyond the ice, as poison courses through veins, ending lives in euphoric agony. Night falls fully, stars mirroring the fires of old, and you trace the legacy. These rituals seeded myths of floods and rebirth in every culture, from Noah's Ark to Aztec sacrifices. But the true terror is their necessity. In a world unraveling, horror became hope. You feel a connection, wondering if modern crises could evoke similar desperations. As you rise, leaving the valley behind, the weight of these stories lingers. The Ice Age ended not with a whimper, but with screams of sacrifice shaping humanity's soul. We've explored caves of blood, plains of burial, feasts of flesh, communal slaughters, and apocalyptic ends, tales that remind us of our fragile origins. If these hidden horrors have gripped you, like and subscribe for more dives into history's shadows. Comment your thoughts. What's the most chilling ancient ritual you've heard of? Together, from wherever you are, we're unearthing the past's darkest truths.